Welcome to I Hate It Here, the podcast for HR and people professionals, making the hardest job in the world just a little bit easier. I'm Hibba Youssef.
There's nothing to beat at the ATS. There's a human behind it. Every resume is read by a human. Yes, there are ways to create knockout questions that help you sort applications okay, is this person authorized to work in this country? Things like that. But there's no robot automatically rejecting you or anything. And yes, it's possible. I am a software engineer by trade. I know that these things are possible. People always tell me that it is. But here's the thing. The real reason why the only person you have to beat is the person reading applications is because hiring managers historically are the biggest FOMO people in the world. They don't want any of that implemented because they feel that if you do things too automatically, you're going to miss out on great people. That's been my experience.
Internal, no vowels, pronounced internal, is the platform your creative team didn't know they needed until now. It helps you tap into the hidden passions of your employees with super personalized visual profiles. Want to know your junior designer is not just a designer, but also a Bravo Reddit mod, Bad Bunny stan, and TikTok-obsessed animator? Now you can. In seconds, you'll see your people as they see themselves and match them to projects they actually care about. Unlock all the talent sitting under your own roof. Head to seeyourpeople.com to learn more. Up first. So if you read the newsletter this week, you will have seen a few people being featured. And in the newsletter, we talked about what's one thing recruiters should rethink. So I invited everyone who contributed to the newsletter onto the podcast today to kind of get some hot takes from them on tips for recruiters and tips for job seekers. So up first is Shannon. Shannon, what's your one tip for recruiters? Oh, also, who are you? God damn it.
Oh, who am I? Great question. I like to refer to myself as a recovering recruiter. I was in recruiting for a bit of my career before I came to Ashby, which is all-in-one recruiting platform. I came to Ashby in a customer-facing role, so I got to work with lots of recruiting teams, helping them build dashboards and reports and set them up for success with their data outcomes. Now I actually lead our community efforts for the Americas, and I still get that really great connection with talent teams. But for me, recruiting was very taxing, and so I get to do all these really nice, fun things for our community, but was able to step away from that day-to-day recruiting work.
I love it. I love that I just jumped right in and was like, give me your hot take, not introduce yourself, which is I think I would normally do. I don't usually do podcasts with 4 different people. So this is new for me too. So everyone gets to hear me live react to how I'm butchering this entire podcast. But thank you so much for being here, Shannon. Also, she's a great photographer. Just going to throw that one out there. She took my pics at an event and I love them and she edited them for me. So Shannon, big thank you for taking my pics during RecFest. Okay, so you've worked with recruiters,
absolutely.
you've been a recruiter, recovering recruiter, and now you're in the community of all recruiters. What's your one tip for recruiters that are listening in?
This is probably going to deviate a little bit maybe from what others are suggesting, but my biggest piece of advice is to keep a happy mail folder. This really saved me on my worst days in recruiting. This job is incredibly taxing and oftentimes can be thankless, unfortunately, from all angles. Depending on the organization you're at, some organizations treat recruiting exceptionally well, and for that, I thank them, but sometimes they don't, and you are kind of stuck with this emotional, taxing nature that I was talking about in my intro. So really saving those uplifting messages for a rainy day where you need that additional boost of support really helped me get through some of the really hard days in recruiting.
I have the same thing of just screenshots of my CEO telling me good job because there's some days where I'm like, everyone's awful. Also, I don't know if it's just us, but I feel like in our function, HR and recruiting especially, everybody thinks that they can do our job.
100%.
And I'm just like, you can't do this job. I just want to be honest, this takes skill. And so the happy mail, I think would really be good for me on the days where I want to rage against everybody.
I have a quick comment about that. There was someone I worked with at Hired, Caitlin Chi, such a supportive friend. She was on our marketing team. I was having a really bad day one day. And do you all remember when Bloom That was hot? the hot company in San Francisco in particular. They send flowers. She sent me a bloom that, and the note says, and I still have it, it's my physical happy mail folder. If this was an easy job, anyone could do it. They can't. That's why we have you.
Wow. That's really sweet.
Yeah.
I'm kind of going to steal that and start sending that to people now too.
You should.
That's so kind. Okay. And then, so second part, like we've talked a lot about recruiting, how to rethink recruiting in the newsletter, and your tip for recruiters. It's also a really interesting job market. And I feel like there are a lot of people out there on social media who are trying to give advice, and maybe they've never done this job. And so I just thought maybe it might be good to ask the experts what job seekers should consider as they're navigating this current market. So what tip do you have for job seekers?
Yes, I feel so passionately about this. So thank you for asking. I'm currently at the intersection of recruiting and marketing. And over time, I've seen how much job seeking and marketing have in common. Like marketing, as a job seeker, you are looking to persuade someone to take the action you want. In this case, getting an interview or getting hired. The concept really starts with your resume. If you think about content first best principles, one of the most important things to understand is how to format your resume for impact. Most of us are on LinkedIn. So just to put this into context, if someone has like a really, really long post, it has no line breaks, no emojis, nothing that really helps break up the text. Are you reading it or are you skipping it? One thing that I always tell people to keep in mind is our minds want things to be easy, right? That's how our brain operates. We want to go with like the lowest effort thing. So the easier you make your resume to read for a reviewer, the better off you'll be. So actionable tip is when you're writing bullet points, first and foremost, connect the action with the outcome. Companies will get hundreds to thousands of applications that have people who have done kind of similar things to you. So how do you demonstrate you did these things exceptionally well and showcase that you took a strategic approach to your role versus doing things like that feel random? And the second part of that is when you've created a bullet point, that bullet point that I just said, bold the outcome. So for example, let's say the bullet is increase sequence open rate by 30% through subject line A/B testing, leading to a 10% decrease in time to fill. Then you can start bolding the things that really stand out as impactful, and the person who's reading it, the text is broken up. Their eyes go straight to the bolded part and they say, okay, this person did this outcome. Wow, that's impressive result. What did they do to achieve that? And this shows that you're really thoughtful, results driven, and understand the connection between the work you do and the outcomes. I've helped a lot of people reformat their resume this way, and they've seen a ton of success getting those initial calls, where previously they were really struggling to even get into the door.
I love that tip. Somebody asked me actually for advice on how I pick what to bold in my newsletter. And I was like, I just, pick the most important thing. Like if someone were to skim this and I really want them to actually read the newsletter, I'll bold the most important sentence. So then they have to go back and read it. So I love that tip. And I get asked that so often. Someone's like, wow, you really use bolding as a technique. And I was like, I just wanted to make my point be known.
I'm a big fan of the bold. I'm a big bold fan.
I love a bold. It was actually really funny because they're like, we should do a session on bolding. I was like, we should not. My tip is...
we should not, but love it.
But thank you for that compliment about how I bold the right things in the newsletter every week. Thank you so much for sharing your tips with us, Shannon. And if people want to get in touch with you, it's the best way to reach you. Also tell them about your podcast.
Best way to reach me is probably LinkedIn. I don't remember what my handle is, so I apologize. I should have looked at that. I think it's just Shannon Ogborn, perhaps. And yes, I host the Offer Accepted podcast by Ashby. We really are trying to bring folks on to give actionable tips to elevate their recruiting and hiring team. So check that out.
Love it. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for contributing to the newsletter.
Thank you.
Yay. Up next, I have another podcaster. All my friends are cool people, honestly. So I'm really killing it with the podcast game. My friend Rhona, who's been on the podcast before. We did an episode together last season, and maybe you'll see all of my friends on an episode in a future season. So be on the lookout for that. Rhona, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's always fun to be here and be on your podcast. I'm totally going to steal Shannon's recovering recruiter thing, but I think I'm going to add something because I am a recovering recruiter, but I relapse from time to time. I miss it from time to time and I take on some roles. But what I mostly do these days is create content, and I run a video marketing agency. And I also have a podcast and newsletter for recruiters. So all I do all day is talk about recruiting and how to attract talent in the best way possible.
I love it. And she's a weekly read for me and a weekly listen for me. So you can catch her also in my newsletter too, where I plug that. She's also a Safe Space member. So I'm so honored to have you on here today. And I can't wait to hear about your tip. You're living, breathing, thinking about recruiting all the time. So what's your one tip for recruiters?
Recruiting is really all about relationships. I think we all know that. And good recruiters focus on building new connections and like nurturing the ones that they already have. But great recruiters know that to build these relationships at scale, you have to do it through building community. And it's 2024, almost 2025. The way to build community and trust at scale, the best way, in my opinion, is through content creation. And I'm not talking about those we're hiring post or like industry news type of thing. I'm talking about really getting in front of the people that you recruit, your target audience, and letting them know who you are, and most importantly, why you're different than every other company out there, because people have choices. So that's what I mean with creating content. An easy way, everyone's always like, oh, we don't have time. An easy way for a recruiter to create content is to start being a guest on podcasts, but not podcasts that are like only for HR people, unless you're recruiting HR people. But if you're recruiting developers, for example, there's a ton of developer podcasts. They always want to know how to get a job as a developer. That's an easy pitch. You can go on those podcasts, talk about it. You're getting in front of people. You're building community. You're getting in front of new people, and the old people that you already have in your community, you're staying top of mind, because then that becomes content that you can share on your channels. So that's my tip.
That's a great tip. I feel like 2025 is going to be the year of actually 2024 was like the year of the personal brand. But now I feel like even more so, a lot of recruiters are going to be like, this is my brand. Here's what I recruit for. Here's what you need to know about my industry. So I'm excited to see more and more content out there, honestly, from people who are actually doing the job. My biggest pet peeve is when people create content not about a job they've ever done or expertise. So I'm excited to see that. Now, for job seekers. So you and I were also together at RecFest, and we were just surrounded by amazing people, some people that were on this podcast. And we talked a lot about tips for job seekers, but I would love for you to share a tip for job seekers for people who are listening today.
I feel like I share this tip all the time, but I'm never going to get tired of sharing it because I truly stand by it and believe it. Look, you are also making a decision as a job seeker, just like the company is. You have to know your deal breakers and your non-negotiables before you launch a job search, especially in this tough market. People think, oh, it's a tough market. I just need to take whatever. No, you don't want to launch another job search in this tough market. So make sure to ask the questions that you need answers for and evaluate that criteria, those deal breakers and those non-negotiables before you take a job.
I love that. That's also the tip I give to people when they're dating. Just thought I'd throw that out there. I'm like, you got to know your red flags. You got to do your manifestation board. You got to know these things. And I think that is really good because you don't want to end up, like you said, in the middle of another job search in this market that's already been really tough. And I think there are a lot of people out there that still have that preconceived notion. And if you're jumping jobs too soon, that something's wrong with you. And I just really want that to change in the future, where I'm like, no, it's okay to leave a job in 6 months if it's not serving you. But I think first, knowing if you even want the job is a place to start.
Yeah, and also for your mental health, not only what people are going to think about you having different jobs, but do you really want to go through that? I hate job searching. I know it sucks. So I don't want to go through that multiple times, especially in a market like this one.
I don't want to have to meet new coworkers and then have them all understand my jokes Because at this point, like everyone already gets my jokes at work week. I'm like, if I go somewhere else, they're going to think like I'm evil. I'm making all these like really dark jokes. Like I probably shouldn't be making them, but like my coworkers get it. If I go somewhere new and then I have to like, be positive and happy all the time. And it's just like not my MO. Okay. Anyways, thank you so much, Rhona, for being here. How can people get in touch with you?
LinkedIn. I'm there every day, Rhona Barnett Pierce. And I also have a podcast. It's called Throw Out the Playbook. And it's really about recruiting in 2024, 2025, not that old 1980s playbook that no one really uses, but everyone talks about.
Like cover letters are required, because I hate that.
Oh my gosh, don't get me started.
That started a tizzy on LinkedIn yesterday when Heather Weidkamp posted about that. And everyone was like, this is a fake stat. And I was like, leave the woman alone. She's literally just posting what she read. And like, people do like cover letters, just not all of us apparently. So thank you so much for being here today. I'm always honored when you're on the pod, and I hope to see you again in the future. Up next is Brandon. Brandon, welcome.
Hey, what's up, Heba? Great to be here.
So pumped. I did your podcast earlier this year. Maybe you'll be on I Hate It Here later next year. I can't believe it's the end of the year already. So next year, please come on the pod.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invite. I'd love to.
I am so pumped to have you here. Can you tell the listeners who don't know you a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, totally. My name is Brandon Jeffs, aka Brando. I am the Director of People and Talent over at TLDR. TLDR is the world's largest tech newsletter. We have more than 5 million software engineering subs. Recruiter, not only.
I love that. I love that all of us are like, we're covering recruiters. This job is so hard, but also here are our tips for recruiters. But you're in the weeds all day long. So what's your one tip for recruiters?
Yeah, my tip for recruiters is this. Look, recruiting is evolving faster than ever. We have AI tools that are doing sourcing, assessing, even interviewing candidates. Vendors are building service as a software to work directly with hiring managers. Companies are complaining of skills shortages, and candidate sentiment, compensation, and startup liquidity are all quite low. So what can recruiters do today to be remarkable? It's this: hone your craft. There's so much talk about recruiting being an art and a science, and we've actually seen more of an index on science as of late, but I'm a big believer that art is going to win the day. So be a craftsman or craftswoman or crafts they. Do your thing. Learn this thing inside and out. Double down on the fundamentals. Excuse me, but I'm going to drop a sports analogy. I am a tech bro caricature of myself. I'm drinking a protein shake, so here we go. When it comes to looking at an analogy of recruiting and sports, AI feels a little bit like a trick play. It might work sometimes, but in moments of adversity, and we are very much in a moment of adversity in recruiting, sports teams and coaches encourage people to focus on the fundamentals. So I would encourage you, whether you're a sports fan or not, to go out and focus on the fundamentals. Hone the craft, shake some hands.
I make sports analogies all the time for a woman who loves sports but only played one sport growing up. So I really appreciated the sports analogy. It's how I've been feeling this year in fantasy football when my kickers keep missing their kicks. I'm like, your job is literally to kick the ball into that, and you can't miss it. Like we'll lose a game, we'll lose a championship over you missing this kick. So I absolutely get it, and I felt that in my heart and soul. And you mentioned AI, and I know we've talked about this so much. Do you have like a top AI tool you use? I asked everyone on LinkedIn to tell me, and the responses were all over the place. So wondering, is there one tool that you stand by?
Yeah, but I'm not getting paid to say it today. So hit me up in those DMs.
Dying. Okay. What's your one tip for job seekers?
My tip for job seekers is this. Look, it's really hard to get a job right now. Resumes historically share our accomplishments, and they're a self-reflective document when we go through the practice of trying to think, what are those things we did? How do we put them on paper? And how do we go through this ATS? You need to flip this on your head. Somebody's head. When you think about positioning your work, go back and reflect on your highlight reel. Oh, sports analogy. Pull out those things you did in Q2 of 2019, Q3 of 2021. Create case studies. Shape these experiences around the value you provide to the business. Yeah, go ahead, have that document. That's a resume that you can submit through the ATS, but hit those cold DMs, hit those cold inboxes of the hiring managers and interviewing stakeholders. Position the value you can provide first. This is either solving a pain point or supporting that person's goals. Then talk about why you're qualified, and they'd be crazy not to hire you. I'm surprised each day the poor outreach I get both on LinkedIn and email. It's not that hard to differentiate yourself. Cold outbound is simple, but not easy. So use that framework and think about pattern disruption. Maybe send somebody a video or a voice note. You want to create white space in your emails as well. Just do something different.
I love that, but I feel like a lot of people got the advice to not actually DM the hiring managers. So I'm like so intrigued to hear from each of you. Like, have you heard that advice? Because I don't actually. So I'm also the recruiter on a lot of our roles at Workweek, and I don't get much outreach either. And I'm always really surprised about it because I'm like, don't you want this job? Does anyone want this job? Like, please DM me. I want this to go fast.
I'm biased by my work experience, and I've worked with really early stage companies, and that's a differentiator. We've got 5 team members on our outbound sales team. So if the job itself is doing outbound sales, like there's no better way to do the job and show you can do it by demonstrating that up front. I think those are the candidates that are differentiating themselves. They're the ones that are providing value. They're the ones that are serving up case studies and net new strategy projects that they have ideated. That's not the playbook for 100,000 person company. But if you're trying to get a job as one of the first 20 employees at a startup, absolutely that's what it takes to get hired.
Interesting. I see Sean and Rhona nodding their heads. We'll get to that at the end. Okay. We'll get to that at the end. I'll do a quick rapid fire round because I have a question about beating the ATS, but I'll get to all of you at the very end. Okay. Brandon, you have to tell us how everyone can get in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my number is 720-646-9075. Hit me up, get in those texts. I'll probably send you singing telegrams, silly TikTok, Vine style videos, whatever it takes. You can hit me up, Brando Hires on LinkedIn. I run the Revel TA podcast. I'll be speaking at the Hire Easy for Recruiters by Recruiters conference on December 10th. I'll be out in San Diego at TA Week, February 3rd through 6th. And another hot conference just dropped for June. Teaser. I'll see you there.
I don't know what it is, so I would like you to tell me offline. Also, is that your real phone number, and do you want me to edit that out of this podcast?
That's my real phone number. Please leave it in.
Great. For 12 years, the world's most innovative brands have trusted Working Not Working to find top-tier creative talent. Now they're helping you keep that talent with Internal. No vowels, pronounced Internal. Internal is your go-to platform for unlocking the hidden passions of your team. With super personalized profiles, you can dig into your people's ambitions, interests, and secret skills in seconds. Who knew your project manager was a national champion pickleball player, D&D dungeon master, and a karaoke queen? Visit seeyourpeople.com and start matching your team's passion to the work that lights them up. Last but certainly not least, Sean, I have to say, I don't think you've heard this story yet because I haven't told you, but I've actually followed you on Twitter for quite a while, and I've just been silently lurking and liking your posts. And then finally one day when you reached out to me and we connected, I was like, oh my God, it's like I'm meeting a celebrity from someone I've crept on so hard. I crept on you so hard, honestly, that I'm surprised you weren't like, why does this woman keep liking every single one of my tweets? But you were just so funny. And you're like one of the earliest people I followed on Twitter as I was reaching out into the content creation world. So I'm just so honored you're here, and thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for just the invite. I really do appreciate being part of this sort of podcast today. And that's so sweet to hear that you were following me on X for that long. So thank you so much.
X.
I have yes. So folks that are listening in, my name is Sean. I am a TA manager at a company called Propel. Propel is a mobile app that's focused on building software specifically for low-income Americans. We serve over 5 million monthly active users who use our app. So it's a really great product. If you don't know about it, definitely check it out on the Google Store or the Apple Store. But beyond that, I'm a non-traditionalist recruiter. I actually started working in a union as my first job. I then graduated and went to project management, and I worked in public health for a number of years. And then from there, I was a resume writer, and then I became a recruiter. So my journey is a little bit of a windy road, but we got here.
I love that. I also did not start in HR and didn't do HR for the first 4 years of my career. So to end up in HR was quite a shock. Sean, what is your one tip for job seekers?
Yeah. So my tip for job seekers is really to leverage sort of those questions that you're asking at the end of the recruiter screen or the end of the hiring manager screen or whatever interview that you're a part of. I think oftentimes when I talk to candidates, they go through a script. They just have a bunch of scripted questions that they're asking us. They're not really being thoughtful. They're not really thinking about it from a strategic way. And you have to step and put yourself into the perspective of a recruiter. Each interview is a building block to something bigger, and it's supposed to teach you more, not just about the role, but how the company operates. And so when you think about each one of those individual interviews, you just want to make sure that you really understand and really capitalize on that time to really dive deeper into really understanding not just what the problems are you trying to solve for as for the role, but also trying to understand what the company is trying to solve for overall. And so oftentimes I always encourage, candidates to dig in, have really thoughtful questions when you're asking, and especially when you're talking to the hiring manager or the hiring manager's boss, like really making sure that you build that rapport and that relationship. And I think when you come across, I think it was Rhona said this earlier about having a strategic lens. If you come into those like conversations with a strategic lens and really, position yourself as a consultant, as someone that's coming in to really help them build up an even stronger business, that wins over people so much more than you coming in and being super nervous, super scared, not knowing what to say, not knowing what to ask. They feed into that energy. And so you want to come across as very confident, knowing exactly what you're willing to deliver and what you can, how you can add value into the role. And so I think it's just really important that you always, position yourself as a subject matter expert in your interviews.
Yeah, that is such a good tip. And I also think about how many times I get into interviews and the person doesn't actually know what the company does. I don't know. Like recently I've like talked to a lot of people and they're like, well, can you tell me what the company does? I'm like, wait a minute. You're applying for a job here. Like this, you could have just I literally put it in the JD. You just had to read it. So I think like coming across as a subject matter expert, yes, but then also thinking about like that positioning of like, how can I actually further the business and what the business is trying to do and position my skill set as like the skill set that's going to take them there. I think just adds. Plus, I don't know, have you ever read that stat about like the superhero pose where if you do that before a call, you're like more confident? I do that before calls.
Oh, wow.
We're all doing it right now. We're all such dorks. This has been such a fun podcast, Ron, honestly. Okay. So real quick, before we wrap up, I wanted to do like a quick rapid fire question and anyone can answer it. So this will be really fun for everyone who's listening. First rapid fire question. What does everyone mean when online there's this like thought that you have to beat the ATS? Rhona, I see you rolling your eyes, so you have to take this one.
I immediately roll my eyes every time I see that. It's just people wanting to sell things to you. There's nothing to beat at the ATS. There's a human behind it. Every resume is read by a human. Yes, there are ways to create knockout questions that like help you sort applications like, okay, is this person authorized to work in this country? Things like that. But there's no robot automatically rejecting you or anything. And yes, it's possible. I am a software engineer by trade. I know that these things are possible. People always tell me that it is. But here's the thing. The real reason why the only person you have to beat is the person reading applications is because hiring managers historically are the biggest FOMO people in the world. They don't want any of that implemented because they feel that if you do things too automatically, you're going to miss out on great people. That's been my experience.
Ooh, that's really good. Anyone else? Anything else to add?
Yes, to add to that, it's kind of like I was talking about earlier with the content best practices. You can definitely tell when you've looked at someone's resume who have intentionally created their resume to beat a software. And I coach them and tell them, hey, like this resume that you've built is not built for the right person, human being. Even at Google, someone hand read every single resume, even at that big of a scale, and they had a huge team doing that. Now, what I will say is watch this space, right? It is evolving in job seekers should be watching this space closely to see how this evolves. Look at the laws and compliance and how that impacts this space. Look at what tools are doing. Like, do your own research on the tools that you're applying through and how they might take this. And that's going to help you understand this a little bit better. But like everything on the internet, like, don't take it at face value, because there's more nuance to it than people are letting on.
Yeah. My partner came out one day and was like, I read on Reddit that you can upload your resume and then in white, you can like make the font all white so that it catches the words. And I was like, what are you reading? And I also was like, why are you on ATS Reddit? Like, what is happening here? And he was like, it just got served to me. And I was like, well, that's not a thing. Like, I don't know why people are telling people that. So I just think this area specifically about like beating the ATS, it's a really tough job market. And I have so much empathy for people who are job hunting right now. But I just feel like that advice tends to do more harm than actual good.
Well, the thing that's the most disappointing to me is how many articles come out from companies like Fortune, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, like those types of publications that have millions of people looking at it and they're giving incorrect information. So it's definitely disappointing. It's definitely disappointing to see how that plays out and how it impacts job seekers in a real way. And also, my last comment on this is, if you are a job seeker, don't use that as a crutch as to why things aren't working out. And I think that's part of the problem is job seekers are getting bad information. And because of that, they're not adapting their approach to their job search. They're not reaching out to people, like Brandon said, they're not adjusting their resumes to be best for content consumption, like we were talking about. So don't let this myth and false narrative be a crutch to why things aren't working out. If something's not working, work to change it.
Y'all, I'll jump in on this one. There are no ifs, ands, or booleans about it. The Reddit anti-work mob has officially moved into LinkedIn. Y'all, I got dragged so bad the other day for posting about spearheading. And I was like joking about using spearheading as a word on your resume because, like you mentioned earlier, you want to focus on the receiving end of the resume. Don't make your resume reader do mental gymnastics to translate spearhead into lead. We scan a resume from top to bottom. It's totally cool to write lead for your last 6 positions if you led a function or a person. So along the lines of like resume coaching, somewhere in this journey in resume land, people thought that having a lot of synonyms for words is like a good thing. There's no bonus points. This is not a book report. Like, make it super simple for somebody to read a resume in 2 minutes. Like lead. Dope. Then we'll ask you questions. Did you lead a people or a process? We'll validate that in the interview process. Just make it easy for folks. Lazi B was all about the XYZ, but I'm all about the 3 Ps. And the 3 Ps for your resume are: what was the problem you were hired to solve? Who are the people you worked with? And what was the process you did? I'm not a resume coach, so this might not get you hired, but I actually think it's not about beating the ATS. It's about beating yourself. You're only as good as your last application submission, so do better. I'm out here in my basement every day, sourcing, working in the recs. It's me against me. So I put this back on the candidates. Do better. You'll see the rewards of it.
Yeah, I love that advice so much. But then I also have so much empathy for everybody who's like job hunting right now, because the market is rough. And like all of us know the bias that comes with recruiting and people wanting certain things, like certain college educations and just like ridiculous requirements for candidates they're never going to find. So I also just have a ton of empathy too for people who are going through it. And I just want to say, like, don't lose hope. I'm hoping that like the things turn around in a big way next year. I don't know. Maybe they won't. Maybe they will. I don't have a crystal ball or magic ball. I'm terrible at analogies. But I worry. I don't know. I'm worried about everybody who's job hunting right now. And I just always like to leave on like you can do it. It's possible.
We know you're a magic crystals girl, Heba.
Yeah. Okay. Don't laugh at me. I'm holding up my crystals and my rocks right now. This one gives me clarity.
I love it.
Okay.
Oh,
we
nice.
got crystals on the skull. This is
all my crystals are in a case upstairs.
I love my crystal. This is what keeps me going through the day. Wait, Sean, you were a resume coach, right? Do you have a resume tip you want us all to know?
Yes, I definitely did. So I was going to mention, I think this is the biggest piece is if you are looking for a resume writer, make sure your resume writer has actually worked in the industry or the job that you're looking to get. I think it's so important because there's so many resume writers out there who have not worked in your industry, who don't really know. They're sort of learning from on the fly about the industry. They're sort of not, given any resources or onboarding to really understand sort of how to write the best resume for you. And so I always tell people, do your due diligence. Make sure that you're finding someone that actually cares deeply about getting you a job. Because ultimately, the ones that are trying to sell you on Beat the Bot are people who are just looking for a quick buck, kind of like crypto. And so I think that, when you're looking for a resume writer, just make sure that you're finding someone that actually can get you value and actually is going to, help you get to your goal.
I love that. Or ChatGPT, because that's where I'd be going to do things. My third teammate. Okay, I want to leave with one. I have one last question. Sorry, this is going to rapid fire, and I'm really throwing a lot at my guests today without telling them. Favorite ATS. If each of you could tell me what your favorite ATS is. None of us are being paid to say what our favorite ATS is, by the way. Unless you are, and then you must disclose that you are being paid to say it's your favorite ATS. Rapid fire. Shannon, you go first, because I know what your answer is.
Oh boy, I can hardly think of one. No, so Ashby is excellent, but let me tell you why. When I was interviewing to leave Google, I was interviewing actually at a competitor to Ashby. I talked to a trusted person and they're like, "Oh, have you heard of Ashby?" I'm like, "No, I haven't heard of Ashby." Google only uses internal tools, so like my finger was not on the pulse whatsoever. I was like, they're like, "Great, I'm going to introduce you." I'm like, "For what job?" They're like, "I don't know. I'm going to introduce you to the CEO." So I go through this whole process for this customer facing role, rec ops consultant role. And I was so incredibly impressed, especially by the data foundation that Ashby has. That's why it is so good to use from so many angles, because the foundation of it is built for data and analytics and all of the things. And so that's why I really appreciate Ashby. When I was doing the interview process, doing the demo, I could see how the product would be so valuable to even the largest of companies because there is that data foundation. So yes, Ashby is my answer. And I guess technically I am paid to say that, but I do love it.
Well, you work there, so you know. Okay, Sean, you're next. What's your favorite ATS? These are some juicy questions.
That's a great question. So I would say for me, my favorite is Greenhouse. I think, out of all of them, I think Greenhouse is just really good with candidate communication and really scheduling. And I started off as an RC, and so I had to learn really quickly how to leverage Greenhouse. And I think once you understand Greenhouse, it actually is pretty intuitive. And so I think for me, I would have to say Greenhouse.
Love it. There's no wrong answers. Rhona, you're next.
This is my favorite question because I've been totally playing with an ATS that I love, Team Taylor. I love it for so many reasons. Like I said in my advice, like recruiting is all about relationships, and Team Taylor actually gets it. Like anytime I ask them, like, "Oh, how can I do this? How can I do this?" That's an immediate like, "Here's this feature. Have you used the nurture feature? Have you used the connect feature?" Like literally, it's all about relationships. It's super easy to use. It's beautiful. I just love it. Everything about Team Taylor and just the team, they really listen to their users. It's like something I've never experienced. You have an issue with it and it's like, "Hey, how do you do this?" If the answer is we don't have that right now, it gets built.
Love it. I love that we're getting all different answers. This is great. Brandon?
Yeah, my favorite ATS is Airtable plus Notion via Zapier. And my favorite sourcing tool is running a bash script against the PDL leak. So when it comes to getting stuff done, like I just like to do it myself. And I appreciate everybody who shared their opinions. I've used those tools. I've got friends in all of those places. Being an early Ashby user was awesome. Love to see it. The data foundation that Shannon spoke to. Rhona, our friends over at Team Taylor. I've got friends over there. Like, I want to see them win. I've done things as petty as match up my tech stack by color. I worked for an early stage startup that had a purple color palette, and I was using Ashby. So all day long, I'm in this like sea of purple. But hey, maybe I want to match up and I want to do that Team Taylor bubblegum yum yum pink. That's the official color code, by the way.
It is.
And then also like, I was out at HR Tech and I got a wonderful picture of myself in front of the greenhouse booth. So like, I'm going to use that all day. Daniel, what's up, man? Like, let's roll. So when it comes to the tool, it's having the right tool for the job. And I've implemented those tools into companies for folks. Just think for yourself and know why you like something. It can be as superficial as I want to match up my color palette, or I need to really understand why this data isn't dataing.
I love that. I accidentally muted myself and then had to unmute myself and figure out very quickly what my mute button was. And that just shows you, I've done so many podcast episodes this year and I couldn't even figure out my mute button while you were talking. I also love that. Sometimes I do make a vain pick for my text stack based on color. I'm writing with the purple pen because purple is my favorite color. Just throwing that one out there. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Okay, fine.
One thing I did want to add is that the Ashby's approach to thoughtful AI has been really eye-opening for me. Adding AI features that make sense and not just kind of throwing anything at the wall and see what sticks. Automated scheduling features. We do have some AI application review stuff that has been rolled out. And interestingly and counterintuitively, some people reject AI in these because they want that personalization. But we also have AI tokens in our sourcing emails, and people actually get higher response rates with the AI personalization tokens because people feel like you really understand them. And so you're not only able to increase the quality of the work you're doing and your outreaches, but you're also able to increase the volume, which the two historically have not really gone together. And so the thoughtfulness, the tool you want to use is a tool that brings a thoughtful approach to how they're building it. Like Rhona said, for your customers, like listening to your customers, understanding what the market needs. Sometimes there's a difference between what people ask for and what they actually need. So getting to the bottom of that. And so that's another reason why I think Ashby is great. But to Brandon's point, it's important that you understand what the organization need is before you choose a tool. Like, it's not a one size fits all. You shouldn't just plop a tool into any organization. You should do your due diligence before that. So 100% aligned with you there, because a tool will not save you from the world's worst practices in your recruiting process.
Can I piggyback on that Ashby sentiment, actually?
Yes.
So as we, like, I think it's actually this week is the 2-year anniversary of ChatGPT. Having spent a lot of time sandboxing these tools, talking to founders hitting me up for like pick your brain questions, which we could jam on. But one of the things I want to call out that Ashby does, they're not paying me to say this really well, is they don't hide the ball. Oh, sports analogy again. What's wrong with me? So a lot of these founders will just say, when you ask them what LLM they're using, they say, oh, well, we use a mix of what's available in the market. Or, oh, it's an open source LLM. I'm on Ashby's website right now, /resources/terms-AI-features. Apply specifically to customers' use of certain OpenAI.com tools. Awesome. Ashby is not hiding the ball. They use OpenAI as their LLM for their AI stack. Why is that? Okay. Sam Altman led Y Combinator. Ashby's a Y Combinator company. Connect the dots. It all makes sense. One of the things that Ashby's doing, interestingly enough, from a sourcing perspective, is enriching data in real time against application submissions. This is probably the most fascinating use case for an all-in-one applicant tracking system in 2025. No one else is doing this. Just in the last 4 to 5 years, we saw applicant tracking systems move into using sourcing tools to be all in one. I worked with John Grana, technical co-founder of Interstellar, acquired by Greenhouse, to compete with Ashby's outbound product. So Greenhouse and Ashby doing a great job in these outbound tools. But the fact is that these technologies are evolving so fast. There are considerations around data privacy. Be curious, ask these questions, click around a website, and don't take no for an answer.
I love that you bring that up, because on my event my HR therapy last week, somebody asked, like, what is HR's responsibility in understanding the AI, the ethical implications of AI? And I had a CEO on, and she's building a tool and using AI. And she was like, we as CEOs should also be responsible for this. So there's a lot of interesting things about that, Brandon. I'll have to have you on another day and just chat with you more about it. My stupid alarm just went off. Sorry. I'm struggling with today's podcast episode. Tyler's going to love editing this one. Okay. Before we go, thank you all so much for joining me. But Brandon, I need to get your intro because I did not get that. So Shannon and Rhona, how people can get in touch with you. I'll make sure we get that. Okay, Shannon and Rhona, did we get everything? Tyler's gonna love Frankensteining this episode.
Shannon, I can't wait till we do our episode. You know it's coming. I'm just waiting. I'm just shy. Just gotta wait for the right moment.
Well, can I come to? Okay. Anyways,
anytime we can just rehash this on all of our podcasts.
That'd actually be really fun. This has been actually the most chaotic episode I've ever had in my life, and I have never loved anything more because this is my podcast. I can do whatever the fuck I want. Thank you all so much for joining me. I'll link all your info in the show notes too, and I just appreciate the hard work all of you are doing to make recruiting a better place, to make the candidate experience better, and all the amazing content all of you are publishing. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thanks for tuning in. Keep up with all the latest HR resources by subscribing on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen. And if you love I Hate It Here, tell an HR friend. I'll see you next time.